When people talk about the big three, there's a natural instinct to always start with the heroes. Characters who carried their stories for years and became faces of an era. But here's the thing, a shonen hero can only shine as bright as the shadows cast against them. And for these three series, the real weight often comes from their villains. The villains who force us to confront questions about power, freedom, and peace. And in my opinion, within the big three, there are three antagonists that stand above all the rest as the ones who truly capture this role. In Naruto, I've gone with Madara Uchiha, while in One Piece I'd say that role belongs to Blackbeard, and finally in Bleach of course it belongs to Aizen. Each of them represents something different. Madara embodies fatalism, the belief that humanity is doomed to repeat cycles of war unless someone imposes peace from above, while Blackbeard is unrestrained ambition, the dark side of freedom where dreams are pursued through betrayal and selfishness, and Aizen represents transcendence, the rejection of human limitation in favor of becoming something closer to a god. Together they don't just oppose their respective protagonists, they force those protagonists to clarify their ideals, to prove why their way of living is worth defending, and that more than anything else is why these villains endure as some of the most memorable in anime. So let's begin with Madara Uchiha, the fatalist who tried to rewrite the shinobi world. Madara's presence in Naruto isn't just about his power, though that alone makes him unforgettable. It's about what he stands for. From the very beginning of his life, Madara was a product of endless conflict. Born into the Uchiha clan during a time of constant clan wars, he was raised in an environment where violence was not just common but expected. His rivalry and eventual bond with Hashirama, who would later become the first Hokage, showed him that even friendship could not escape the gravity of politics and bloodshed. When the Uchiha and Senju clans came together to form Konoha, it looked like a miracle, a first step towards peace, but to Madara it was only a temporary truce. He saw how suspicion and hatred still simmered beneath the surface. He saw how people's fear of difference and desire for power would eventually tear the fragile system apart. To him, peace was a dream too fragile to survive reality, and that belief became the foundation of his philosophy. Madara concluded that humanity itself was incapable of sustaining peace. Left alone, people would always slide back into war, betrayal, and hatred. His solution was drastic, the infinite Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu that would trap the entire world in a dream where conflict no longer existed. People would live in illusions of happiness, never realizing the cost of their so-called peace. It's here that Madara becomes the perfect foil for Naruto. Naruto's entire story is built on the belief that bonds do matter, that even the most broken people can find a way forward if someone believes in them. Madara on the other hand rejects bonds as weak and temporary. He sees humanity as doomed to failure, incapable of real change. In essence, Naruto and Madara embody two sides of the same coin. One sees possibility and the other inevitability. The brilliance of Madara's role lies in how he doesn't just oppose Naruto personally, he forces the entire shinobi world to confront his philosophy. His actions bring about the Fourth Great Ninja War, a conflict that finally unites the divided villages. Enemies who had once shed each other's blood now fight side by side, not out of love or trust at first, but out of necessity. And that irony is striking, because the man who claimed peace was impossible without control is the man who causes the greatest shinobi alliance of all time. Madara's narrative weight also lies in how he looms over the series long before he appears in person. His name is spoken all throughout the series, and for years he's a ghost haunting the shinobi world, and when he finally arrives on the battlefield he does so in overwhelming fashion. Entire armies crumble before him, reinforcing the idea that he isn't just a man, he's a force of nature. His impact on the story is clear. Madara is fatalism personified. He's the voice that says peace is impossible, that freedom only leads to suffering, that the only escape from war is to give up on reality itself. And by standing against him, Naruto's ideals are sharpened to their fullest edge. Naruto has to prove that peace can be built not on illusions but on trust and perseverance. And when we compare Madara to the other big three villains, his uniqueness becomes clear. While Blackbeard embraces the chaos of the world, thriving on unpredictability, and Aizen seeks to transcend it entirely, Madara chooses to control it, to lock it into one state. He represents the weight of history pressing down on humanity, the belief that cycles of hatred can never be broken. He doesn't tempt you as much with his charm or charisma, but he tempts you with despair. He asks you to consider whether hope is foolish, and that's why he remains one of the most important antagonists of the big three. Defeating him isn't just about ending a war, it's about rejecting the idea that peace is impossible. Next, let's look at someone very different, because if Madara represents control through despair, Blackbeard represents the opposite, which is freedom twisted into something monstrous. Madara seeks to lock the world into illusion while Blackbeard thrives on chaos, on taking advantage of instability. He represents ambition without limits, a man who mirrors Luffy's dream of becoming Pirate King but strips it out of loyalty, joy, and camaraderie. He's terrifying not because he's the strongest from the start, but because he's cunning, he waits, he schemes, he knows exactly when to strike. He rises not by playing fair but by exploiting opportunities. Every betrayal, every underhanded move propels him higher. empire. His philosophy is simple: in a world of pirates, you take what you can, when you can, and if you hesitate, you lose. That makes him the perfect foil to Luffy. Luffy builds his dream on friendship, on a crew bound by trust and shared adventure. To Luffy, freedom means being able to live joyfully without restraint. And for Blackbeard, freedom means discarding every bond, every principle, and every moral. It means betraying his comrades without hesitation if it brings him closer to his goal. Both are dreamers, but where Luffy romanticizes the pirate's journey, Blackbeard exposes its darkest side. And narratively, Blackbeard's presence is immense. He's responsible for the seismic changes in the One Piece world, his role in the major deaths of the series, his rise to Yonko status. Each act alters the balance of power. Unlike villains like Crocodile or Doflamingo who dominate single arcs, Blackbeard lingers as a constant presence across the series. When compared to Madara and Aizen, Blackbeard stands out as the most grounded. Madara and Aizen wield godlike visions, but Blackbeard is the raw, ugly truth of ambition. He doesn't disguise his methods as noble. He doesn't dress them in ideology. He simply takes what he wants. In some ways, that makes him the scariest of the three. Madara and Aizen represent intellectual extremes, but Blackbeard shows us what happens when a human being embraces selfishness without shame. He reminds us that evil doesn't always come dressed as philosophy. Sometimes it's just dressed as hunger. Madara's dream of control and Aizen's dream of transcendence both involve reshaping the world into something better. But Blackbeard doesn't care about this better world. He doesn't care about peace, about godhood, about anything beyond his own gain. He's freedom without morality, and that's what makes him the perfect shadow to Luffy. So if Madara represents fatalism and Blackbeard represents ambition, then Aizen represents something else entirely. As I've briefly mentioned before, I think it's transcendence. His philosophy is not about peace or freedom, but about breaking limits. He sees Soul Society, the governing structure of Bleach's world, as stagnant and oppressive. To him, the system is flawed, not because of its enemies, but because of its very nature. He doesn't want to reform it, he wants to overthrow it. And in its place, he envisions himself standing above all as a godlike figure. What makes Aizen so chilling is how he pursues this vision. Unlike Blackbeard's open betrayal or Madara's overwhelming force, Aizen begins with manipulation. For much of Bleach, he appears calm, respectable, even trustworthy. He earns loyalty, plays the long game, and only when his plans are ready does he reveal the truth. And when he does, the mask comes off entirely, showing that he's charismatic, intelligent, and always one step ahead. For Ichigo, Aizen is the ultimate test of identity. Ichigo's story is about accepting who he is: human, Soul Reaper, Hollow, Quincy, etc. A patchwork of contradictions that he has to embrace to grow. But I feel Aizen rejects that kind of acceptance. To him, being bound by nature, by humanity, by limitation is a weakness. He seeks to become something greater, something untouchable. Like Madara and Blackbeard, Aizen reshapes his world. His betrayal destabilizes Soul Society, shaking its very foundations. His pursuit of forbidden power drags countless characters into a struggle that tests not just their strength, but their understanding of loyalty, trust, and leadership. And thematically, Aizen forces the story to ask what it means for a system to be legitimate. If Soul Society's order is flawed, what right does it have to rule? Aizen's rebellion isn't just personal ambition, it's a critique of the system itself. When compared to Madara and Blackbeard, Aizen occupies a unique middle ground. Madara wants control and Blackbeard thrives on chaos, but Aizen wants transcendence. He doesn't seek peace or freedom, but rather power so absolute that he can stand above both. In that sense, he reflects humanity's oldest temptation, the desire to become more than human, to touch divinity. And that makes him not just an antagonist for Ichigo, but a philosophical symbol within Bleach itself. Taken together, Madara, Blackbeard, and Aizen reveal just how much the big three relied on their villains to drive their stories. Each one embodies a philosophy that directly challenges their hero. Naruto believes in bonds, Madara believes bonds are fragile illusions. Luffy believes in freedom built on trust, and Blackbeard believes freedom means betrayal and selfishness. Ichigo believes in embracing identity, and Aizen believes in rejecting limits and reaching for godhood. Each one reshapes their world massively. Madara unites the shinobi world through fear, proving that even despair can force cooperation. And Blackbeard destabilizes the balance of power across the seas, turning dreams into nightmares. While Aizen exposes the fragility of Soul Society, showing that its order rests on shaky ground. Their actions change not only their protagonists, but the societies around them. What ties them together is how they force their worlds to confront uncomfortable truths. Madara asks if peace is possible without control, Blackbeard asks if freedom can exist without morality, and Aizen asks if order deserves respect when it fails those under it. Together they form a spectrum of what it means to pursue power, and by defeating them the heroes prove why their own ideals matter. That's why these three endure as the defining antagonists of the big three. They're more than just obstacles. Their philosophies given form, living questions that demand answers. They mirror the heroes, challenge their worlds, and force us as viewers to confront the cost of power, peace, and ambition. So yeah, the big three are of course remembered for their heroes, but just as much they're remembered for these villains as well. Together they remind us that a story is only as strong as the ideals it tests.